Good afternoon. I suppose that after midday it's good afternoon. My name is Marta Laurian, so I'm here representing the United Nations Humanitarian Response Depot, managed by the World Food Programme, in my capacity as the manager of the Brindisi base and the deputy network coordinator. This is who I am, but what is the UNHRD? I suppose it's much better that I introduce UNHRD before I start talking on how we fit in the reforms and how we anticipate and what is the way forward, etc. Because if you don't know who we are, maybe it's difficult to follow the thought that I have in my presentation. So we may start with a little video that shows our activities. I will tell you a little bit more on who we are after I start the presentation, but I think that the video summarizes already some of the key points that I will talk about. Before starting, I just want to thank the University of Salento and Susanna in particular for this idea of calling a dialogue on supranational. We all say supernatural, there must be something in it. Democracy. Because I think that the topic is key and is crucial in this particular moment, and because I think that the idea of calling not a conference, not a seminar, but a dialogue, I think it's really important. And the fact that we are here coming from different backgrounds, different geographical location, with different ideas, I think it's a start and it's the basis of the concept of democracy, at least as I think that democracy should be. Going back to what you have said this morning, it's participation, and we are all called to participate in that. So from the video, you've seen basically who we are. We are humanitarian workers, and we, as UNHRD, belongs to the United Nations World Food Program. The two questions of this particular roundtable are where are we and which the way forward. And I think that to say, first of all, let me go here. To say where are we and which the way forward, I think that we have to start on how we got here. How we got here as in terms of humanitarian assistance, in terms of emergency preparedness and response, which are part of the democracy because are fundamental to protect the human rights, which are the basis of democracy. This table, which is a little bit confusing, as I am, I'm looking at Michele who knows me, so I know he knows I'm a little bit confusing, tries to summarize what happens in general in the humanitarian world from 1991 up to now, and what happened in our UNHRD life. It's on the back, and you will see that a number of situations are kind of cross-cutting, and that our life is strictly interacting and sometimes anticipated some of the main reform in the humanitarian work. Maybe it might sound a little bit bold. Surely it's proudly. I'm saying it proudly. When we as humanitarian work, we do since 91 on the basis of this resolution 46/182, that there was a call for a major coordination that happened immediately after our response in the Gulf War. We responded promptly, but we were not coordinated at all. And this resulted in a duplication of efforts in a number of costs that we could have avoided. So we started in 91 talking about coordination in humanitarian response. And this led the United Nations to create this Department for Humanitarian Affairs in 92, which was specialized in humanitarian affairs. So the aim was to go there more coordinated. What happened then is, in 97, the UN started one of the major reforms, which tackle on humanitarian very deeply. And this reform, this call for reform was a kind of a decade that took us to reform in some of our basic. And so the just born DHA in 98 was transformed in the Office for Humanitarian Affairs, for the coordination of humanitarian affairs. So the accent was more and more on the need of coordination, to the extent that we created a body that was not an operational any longer like the DHA was, but simply coordination. And here is something that UNHRD is linked to, because in '84, we had already in Italy, in Pisa, the so-called UN Supply Depot. Was basically a depot for relief items, where different organizations at that time, the World Humanitarian Organization and the World Food Program, were putting some of the relief items. And the idea came, I think, brilliantly from the Italian government, who put the military installation at the disposal of the United Nations for both peacekeeping operation, they were actually there as well, and humanitarian. But that was simply a depot, and it was managed by the DHA before. Then it passed on to OCHA, and then when OCHA really became the coordination body, the Interagency Standing Committee of the United Nations said, wait a minute, there is a World Food Program in Italy, so let's give this mandate of managing a depot that is in Italy to an operational organization, not to a coordination body. And so what happened? It happened that in 2000, there are two key events: the Declaration for the Millennium Development Goals, generally, and it happened that we moved from Pisa to Brindisi. We, at that point, the World Food Program, and we decided, okay, that's a good opportunity, great opportunity. Why don't we use this depot not as a depot, but to become something more, a logistics platform at the service of the humanitarian community. We started with 5 partners, NGOs and some UN organizations that started, and government, like the Italian government, and we grow and grow and grow, and now we are 86. Basically, the entire humanitarian community is using UNHRD and is partnering with UNHRD. 2005 is another key year for the humanitarian workers and for us in UNHRD particularly. That was the year when the UN started a major humanitarian reform agenda, and that was based on the experience of this terrible year that was the year that goes from the end of 2004 to the end of 2005. You will all remember we started with the tsunami at the end of 2004. We ended with a tremendous earthquake in Pakistan. In between, there was a major crisis in Niger. We, as UNHRD, were involved in all this. The humanitarian workers in general and the humanitarian community was there. And we started thinking two things in the upper side of this slide. I mean, at the general terms, we said, okay, coordination is needed, but we need to go forward. It's not only coordination, it's partnering. It's not only that we have to go there and coordinate. We have to really work together and partner and put together our strength. So the concept of the logistics cluster, the shelter cluster, the concept of put each agency that had a particular expertise at the service of the other agencies in order to not only go there coordinated, but to partner was there. And the idea of partnership in UNHRD concept was already there in 2000, because this is what we started in 2000 thinking. We have to work together in the humanitarian world. And so what happened in 2005, this humanitarian reform agenda started. And as far as UNHRD is concerned, we said we have to replicate the model that we had in Brindisi that was so successful till then, but not enough any longer in other strategic world located places. So we replicated Brindisi, the HRD, in Malaysia, in Panama, in Dubai, in Accra, and now we have also an antenna in Spain. Why we came to this conclusion? Because the year of the tsunami in the Pakistan that I mentioned was a lesson for us. The tsunami response was so costly for us to go from Brindisi to the affected countries, and in Pakistan we were just ashamed because we were sending back to Pakistan what we had bought and stored in our warehouse there, because mainly our suppliers for tents and blankets were there at the time. So the crazy thing was we had stored items that we had procured there, and then we had to resend it back to them with a lot of cost, etc. So we replicated, and we did it having as a light also the humanitarian reform agenda, the concept of the partnership that we already thought about in 2000 was the key. So we went there and there. Then another key point is in 2012, the Rio Plus 12 conference, where the entire world started discussing about sustainable development goals. And this is, I think, another real important turning point, which at this point is no longer only touching upon the humanitarian workers, but is really a call for the entire world. And here, I think it's a call for democracy. From 2012 up to 2015, when the Agenda 2030 was adopted, the dialogue was on what functioned on the Millennium Development Goals, what didn't function, what is that we have to change. And the three things that the agenda came out with, I think, are the path for the real democracy. First of all, having understood that this is not an issue that relates only to government, but it relates to everybody, so it's a cross-cutting theme. So from the single individual to the biggest government, each of us have something to say and to do, so it's the base of democracy in a way. The fact that the idea of sustainability is not not only related to environment, but it's related to economical aspect, to social aspect, to law, and the interconnectivities of not only all the SDGs, the goals that basically the entire world has targeted itself with, but the interconnectivity of these three pillars, the economic elements, the social elements, and the environmental, it's the key. You cannot solve the environmental problem if you don't look at the impact on the rest. You cannot solve the economical problem if you don't look at the social impact, the environmental impact. We as humanitarian workers are totally touched by that. And this is how we get to the actual current ongoing UN reform, which is how do we support governments, which are no longer the governments only of the developed countries, of the developing countries, as it was in the Millennium Development Goal, but every government, every country, every individual, how we in the United Nations can really support and go there. How can we also target ourselves towards democracy? How can we measure if we reach that? This is what we are discussing so far these days with the new reforma that is ongoing, and that's the goal that we are going towards. Those are the 17 ambitious sustainable development goals of the Agenda 2013, and this is where we have to go. As I said, those are all interconnected. The goal 17 you have seen in the video is by definition what UNHRD is looking at, and it's a particular goal because it's not only it not only has a content, but it draws a methodology. The methodology is you cannot reach any of this sustainable goal if you don't partner, if you don't do it together. So the interconnectivities of the goals makes the interconnectivity also of the actions in a way. And this is what we as UNHRD are doing. But if this is the path, if this is the path that we want to follow, what do we find usually? Are we on track? Well, yet from our perspective, from the perspective of the humanitarian workers, we see more and more that in this moment the space for democracy is reducing because of conflicts. And the conflict have a tremendous impact on the food insecurity. On the other hand, the food insecurity has a tremendous impact on the conflict. So we talk about a circle, and this creates also internal displacement. It creates migration. It's all interconnected. So on one hand, we are all, and maybe for the first time ever, when I say all, because the discussion on the agenda really was an inclusive discussion. For the first time ever, we are talking about how to go with the right path, on the right path of democracy, but on the other hand, the real situation, that's why I said the topic is really key these days. The real situation is that we have a number of conflicts, which are conflicts for the resource, which are conflicts that are, I mean, to be linked to what Professor Marcelli was saying before, that the fact that democracy now is kind of stolen by the market, is stolen by private interest. It's also seen in this developing of conflicts for the resources. So we have a kind of two parallel paths that we have to adjust, I think, at this point. So and also the call for reform that the UN Secretary General has made is, or should be, we hope it is, in this direction, in the direction of overcoming this situation. As far as food insecurity is concerned, which is something that as a World Food Program, of course, I'm particularly interested in, the situation is so critical critical and it's so impacted by the conflict that since 2000, we have slowly registered, since the declaration of the Millennium Development Goals, we have slowly seen an improvement. Yet, in 2016, the data tells us that we are back from 777 million malnourished people in 2015. Now we are growing to 815 million, and it's an increase. And the increase is due mainly for the reason of the conflicts that we are having now. And to go back to what this morning in the other room we were saying, this is not only, it can only be demandated to government. It's a duty of each of us to make this ending and to go on the right path. As I said before, we, by definition, we in UNHRD are looking at the 17 as our goal, although as WFP members, the number 2, ending hunger, is of course our overarching theme. The SDG 17 has a different sub-goals that we can, some of that, like the multi-stakeholder, building on experience, capacity building, and technologies, are really linked to the specific activities of UNHRD. Multi-stakeholder, I said we have 86 partners that include UN agencies, NGOs, government, non-governmental organizations, and these partners, they are all working with UNHRD. They all benefit of our services. We we promote shared cargoes to cut costs in the response to emergency. We promote the sharing of the relief items that we store in our warehouses so that they don't have to duplicate efforts. And we support with our suppliers on how to get the relief items much faster. But we also partner with the private sector and university, and we do this through our lab. We have established, well, it's a little bit fancy, the name lab. It's not that you may think of a scientific laboratory. In reality, we have engineers working there, young engineers, but we, based on our experience and discussing with our colleagues on the field, we test items and we try to ameliorate the items that we have in stock in order to better respond to emergency. And we do this with an eye to green solutions. So I'm looking at my colleagues here who are really into that. The green solutions, I mean, the technologies that we are trying to develop, one of the examples is this. As the World Food Program, one of the items that we have in stock in our depot are this mobile storage unit that we send in emergency that are needed to store the relief items, not only the relief items that the World Food Program sends, but all the relief items that arrive in an emergency. As far as the WFP is concerned, till a certain moment, we were only concentrated on food. Then we started discussing on the need of nutrition. It's not only, the food is not only the thing that makes you survive in terms of alimentation. How do you say it? I'm just inventing a word. But it's also nutrition that it's relevant. Now, to maintain the nutrition, the nutrient inside of food, which are key for pregnant mother, for little kids, etc. We need also to work on keeping them well stored. Now, the tent that we always have used were fine to store the regular food that we usually use, like the rice, etc., but not to keep the nutritious. So in the lab, in Brindisi, in our small lab, we created this insulation that is now used everywhere to keep the temperature at the right level. And so we were fine, we store it, and then we start thinking, okay, but from the moment the suppliers send this nutritious food to the moment we get it, are we sure that that the temperature is correct. So what we are working now is this silver thing that you see here. And when I say we, I say there are 3 students from an American university working with us, with 2 engineers, young engineers. They came out with this some sort of Columbus egg. It's a coverage. We are now developing the prototype. We only have it like this, but we are now doing the prototype. It's a coverage that goes on a regular pallet. It doesn't need any power, nothing. It's just a reflective thing. And it's made of a thing that remembers me the bags that we used to put the food inside. I mean, it's a regular, but it's a particular type of insulation that it has. It's done in a way that when we transport the food, the temperature is kept to the right level to maintain the nutritious. But when it arrives on the field, in order not to create garbage, if you open it, and this is the T that you see there, each of the pieces can become a mattress or can be used to insulate a prefab. So those who receive the food not only receive the food, but also receive other items. And with this concept, which is back to the idea of reducing the waste and go green, etc., we are starting working in our lab also on how do we reuse the packaging of what we sent out, because we have measured that 10% of what we sent out result in packaging which is ultimately garbage. So on one hand we help, but on the other hand we create garbage. So we are trying to reduce the waste. These are as example. The box there is the typical box of the tent that we sent out. It's made of wood. So what we thought is, okay, inside the box, together with the tent, we put a little mattress, a toy, so, and 2, how do you say piedini? Piedini, support. So this can be transformed in a cradle. And because a family can also have other children, we put a blackboard, so while the little one sleeps, the other can draw. And this we have done with UNICEF, so we are working with them. The other thing that you see there is a solar cooker. The one there, it's the regular cartoon box with a kitchen set that forever we have sent in the field. We thought, okay, one of the big problem in the areas where we work is that in order to cook, women, and I don't say women because of something, it's because it's usually women. Women go very far in the forest, cut the tree, come back, and they have to burn the tree and cook. This results in problems for the woman because they have to go far, they risk to be raped, they risk to be killed because we are talking not safe areas. It's a problem for the environment because cutting the trees and then make the fire, etc., it's really a problem. And for us, the cartoon was a waste. So combining these 3 problems, we came up with this stupid solution. We are asking all our suppliers to put this filter, a silver filter inside the cartoon. We pre-cut the cartoon, so the moment the cartoon arrives, they not only receive the kitchen set, they can shape it as a cooker, and they have a solar cooker. Of course, it works for those countries where the sun is really hot. It cannot work if we are standing under the snow, but in the major of the country we intervene, this can work. So we are now changing also the type of pots that we're putting inside in order to make it more effective. And the engineers are now also studying how this can become a real oven, so not only to cook the rice, but also to do something more. And we will probably put inside a receipt manual on how to cook the basic food with this kind of stuff. I'll leave it to you, who are much better than us in green solutions.
Okay, taking advantage of a few minutes of, introduction. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Maria D'Aprile, and I am the liaison officer of the United Nations Global Service Center, and we also work in Brindisi. And together with me, my colleague Jackie Amoko, and she will soon present the environmental strategy for peacekeeping missions, because as Marta was saying, we are basically those who provide the support to the peacekeeping operations and all over the world, basically, UN operations. First of all, on behalf of the acting director of the United Nations Global Service Center, let me thank the University of Salento for this beautiful initiative, and in particular, Susana Cafaro is also, one of our long-standing friends with whom we had, a lot of good initiatives, but this one is crucial in our times. And indeed, the theme itself, the Supranational Democracy Dialogue, is the core of the UN mandate, the reform itself, the Sustainable Development Goals. Everything goes around the same topic. What can we do in order to save our planet? And the beauty of the development goals just stands in the fact it's not a reform for the United Nations only, it's a reform whereby the entire civilian society is called to act and to take an active role, because organizations, in the end, is not an empty box. It's just done by people. And it's just the people that can make the difference. And after that, Jackie will illustrate the environmental strategy, because environment is indeed one of the most challenges that all of us need to face. And, we are obliged to do it to save our planet. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have been introduced. My name is Jacqueline Amoko. I am in charge of the Environmental Technical Support Unit at the Global Service Center. I apologize that the video, you aren't able to get the sound out of that, but you will have access to that. It's with Susanna, whom we thank very much. It's also available, I believe, on YouTube. Not yet, but it will soon be. But basically, because we've had the opportunity of following Marta, it so happens that you've got a better picture of the sort of business that we do. I think this is a great opportunity to bring to you people who are our member states better information about what's going on where we work. I like the fact that everything about the Sustainable Development Goals is out there, because really, if we don't do this together, we're not going to get very far. And when we talk about the government, when we talk about influence, at the end of the day, that is us. And I'm glad that this is bringing together a group of people from so many different avenues, and that this is such a great opportunity for us to get this information out there where it will make a really big difference. When asked to come and make this presentation, it was a little confusing, because peacekeeping is such a particular business. We're out there trying to restore peace where people are dying every day. And when I say people are dying, we're not talking about just men, women, and children and the civilians out there. Our peacekeepers are dying every day too. It doesn't necessarily make the news. So in circumstances like that, when we talk about, for example, keeping the environment or the Sustainable Development Goals, you can imagine that we're competing with very many other priorities. So what I'd like to share with you is not a message which we've only created for you. This is the message of the Department of Field Support. This is what we're trying to do in spite of the challenges we're facing out there. And perhaps the message is, if we're able to do it in the circumstances we're in, then we should all be able to influence something no matter where we are. So I'm going to present what is the strategy, what is the context, what is the vision, and where are we currently. It's not intended to make it very technical. It's actually to hope that at the end of this session, Marta and I and Maria can have questions and some interaction. So this is actually an indication of our footprint. We show our other funds, agencies, and programs. But as you can see on the red part, a greater proportion of our environmental footprint, greenhouse gas emissions are from peacekeeping. Although this is from 2015, I assure you over 2016 data and 2017 data, it's going to be similar. We have a very large footprint. The issue of risk is our next level up. Our strategy is grounded in risk management. So when it comes to where we deploy, we're in extremely remote locations, rural locations, sensitive and vulnerable communities are in close proximity to where we are. Usually we do not have any form of basic infrastructure to rely on. So you can imagine, every day we wake up here and we go to our tap, we turn it on, and we expect water to flow. Acquedotto Pugliese guarantees that, etc. When you flush your toilet, the water goes down the drain, and many of us do not know where it goes. In the situations where we are, we do not have that luxury. So we're deploying thousands of troops, Italians, Ugandans, where I'm from, etc. And we have a large presence in a community that cannot cope with what we're bringing. As Marta has said, we have packaging, we have food, we ship thousands of containers across in order to enable the military presence, support peace operations and peace building. So from where we are, we say we still have to manage risks. Part of managing the environment is managing risks. So 100% of our risks in wastewater come from us, peacekeeping. We're not as lucky as Marta and her team. When it comes down to solid waste, 100% of the risks are generated by peacekeepers. And then, of course, we generate a lot of carbon emissions because we do a lot of logistics. So everything we transport from any port of entry to the most remote parts of the world, you can't imagine how much fuel that's costing us. Energy that we produce is all fuel-based, all our transportation, internal logistics. So this is just an indication of the places where we are. 36 different peace operations. We're talking about over 170,000 personnel across the world. Many of them really insecure locations, from Haiti all the way through to Pakistan. You can see clearly from the circles in Africa that the largest presence is in Africa. We also support, like I've tried to indicate, a large spectrum of services, everything from asset management. If we have to have a laptop anywhere, it's something that we bring in. It's something that we offer services, operation, maintenance, systems, operations, everything. If it's water, we drill our own wells, we treat the water, we distribute it. There is a lot of stuff that we do. But I hope this also brings to you the opportunities that are present by virtue of what we are doing. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to partner at different levels because we are bringing this into the field missions across the world. I think it goes without saying what our challenges are in delivering this. The remoteness, the expectations, the insecurity, you cannot imagine. But that's beside the point. We still have to do something. We've talked about remoteness. This slide shows how far we are from the seaports. So if you imagine that we have to bring in everything, a bed, a table, a chair, a water treatment plant, a diesel generator, a PV plant, whatever it is, we're traveling extremely long distances in these countries. What is great is that basically member states have said we have to do more, we have to do better. And Italy is one of the countries, I must say, that is really fronting this. Right now, Italy is sitting on the Group of Friends, which is an initiative amongst, let's say, the highest powers to say, let's do more. How can we help? How can we participate? Last year, Italy was on the G7, and environment was one of the subjects that it kept supporting and encouraging. I must say we also have, for example, 2 extra budgetary posts that the Italian government has funded this year. We have a junior professional officer who's sitting with us in Brindisi, and we have at headquarters a senior environmental officer supporting this. So we're getting a lot of support to do more. We have environmental policies, we have waste management policy, and that brings me basically to the discussion of what is our vision. And I think it's important for everybody to understand this. We are striving every day, we're not there yet, to deploy responsible missions that can achieve maximum efficiency in their use of natural resources and operate at minimum risk. Risk is really important. It determines how do we prioritize our resources. And that risk is to people, societies, and ecosystems, and to contribute to a positive impact on these wherever possible. So that's basically the background of what we are talking about. The question is, what are we doing about it? And the great thing is that Marta has already indicated that when you talk about improvement, you cannot look at single pillars. So the environment strategy is right now a 6.5-year program that we started at the middle of 2016. We're already a year down the road. And we've identified 5 key pillars. And we must be making progress across these pillars if we're going to sustain the roof that we have these pillars supporting. So we have 3 technical pillars which are led out of our office here in Brindisi. We look at water and wastewater, energy, and solid waste. And then we have environment management systems and wider impact. And wider impact is sort of our avenue to make sure that our presence is influencing our communities more consciously and more positively. So I do not know if I need to get into the details of what these 3-year objectives currently are, but the basic is manage risk and be more efficient. And the interesting discussion about environment is we're not like tree huggers, and I don't say that to insult or to confuse. The point is that where we're more efficient, it can be good for our pockets as well as for the environment, and we need to take that into consideration. If we're operating generators at maximum efficiency, we are generating less carbon emissions, we are transporting less fuel, but we're also saving money, and that money can go to greater good. So Susanna will have a copy of this presentation in which you can look at the key objectives. What is good so far? The great thing is that we're getting great feedback. The strategy has given us significance in the field missions, given everybody priorities and a unified direction in which we can all move forward. I think it's really important that we stop scattering ourselves in multiple directions, that we set ourselves in a direction and we commit to it. So the 2030 agenda is one of those, and little strategies like this are all making their impact to that big overall goal. So great things are happening, and energy, for example, solar energy is increasing in field missions. The size of the circles shows the volume of solar installations. We have a great one here in GSC, and we also have in Valencia. The circles in blue show work in progress. I've already talked about the fact that we deliver end-to-end services. So this slide basically just shows everything from Darfur, where our teams are drilling water in the desert, all the way through to wastewater treatment, reuse, the use of dust suppression, recharge of groundwater aquifers. These are all elements that we can have a positive influence. We're looking at waste management. This is probably one of the biggest gaps. Many of the circumstances in which we deploy do not have any kind of infrastructure. I've already mentioned that we have to generate our own electricity and energy. This means that we move a lot of fuel. We run our own vehicle fleets. Unfortunately, this can result in contamination, poor usage, emergency response, etc. But now we have mechanisms in place where we can remediate these things ourselves. So for example, early in May, we're going to be at the FAO Symposium, where we're presenting a case study of one of our missions, where we were able to develop a low-cost and very effective solution to remediate any soil that has been contaminated with oil. In our video, you saw that we also do a lot of rapid environmental assessments. So it's also about quantifying and explaining and understanding how much of an impact are we putting. But these are also services that we're interested in extending to our partners. So we're also interested in the health and the quality of life of our personnel in very difficult conditions. Similar to what Marta has shown, we do a lot of capacity building across all of these technical pillars. And this is another area the Italian government is looking to support and that we really would like to put out there as gratitude for the support that we're getting. This is something that we cannot achieve on our own. But what's really important in all of this is that if we do not measure something, we cannot improve, we cannot manage it. And this is it. We're going to report back to you every year, starting from July. How are we performing on the environment? Member states are now saying this is unified. All missions are going to report. So we're looking at planning, reporting, and budgeting, and this is being rolled out right now. And just to say that you're in the early days of where we are, we invite you to join us in this struggle and effort. Research, development, innovation is something that we welcome. And if you can be a part of it and if you can put your message out there, please, we welcome it. So we're on course. Right now, we're just right where the star is, down there. And we're looking forward to achieving what we're setting out to do. Thank you very much.